Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to A to Z Running. Hi everyone, welcome to the A to Z Running Podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andi.
And I'm Zach.
Today on the A to Z Running Podcast, we're talking about racing, a very exciting topic. We're going to be talking about things that factor in to having a great day on race day. And to talk about this, we are bringing on Alicia Monson. She's a pro runner. She ran, in fact, the 9th fastest time in U.S. history for the 10K. Super speedy. And we'll also be discussing an NCAA collegiate record as well as a near miss in the 100K world record, among other things.
And because all of those things are highly interesting to you, as well as everything else we talk about on this show, you need to go to AtoZrunning.com, click the word follow, and then on YouTube, subscribe and ring the bell so you get alerts, which means that everything good we have to say arrives at you in a very timely manner.
You're so humble. You're like, all the great things. Well, it's because we have great guests, and we're really fortunate to have great guests on the A to Z Running Podcast.
And if we didn't think we had good things to say, we wouldn't be recording our own voices every week and sharing them with you.
Well, one of those people is Nate Martin. He was on the podcast last week, and we have a comment about that episode.
Corey shared, happened to be on not on Facebook, on YouTube, in fact, which is a place where people still do things, and commented, such a great interview, belief, action, and trust. So good. And those were things among many others related to Nathan's conversation, which is a big hit for the many who have listened to it, and many appreciating the mantra that he shared, find a way. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't heard that episode yet, you definitely need to. In fact, it will inspire and encourage, as well as provide some very practical considerations for sustaining long-term progress. Go back and listen to episode 68 if you've missed it.
So we do want to share with you again about the Mobo board. So we mentioned it briefly last week, and we talked about ankle and foot stability and what it can do to help provide for you a great base in your running. So something that you might want to do before a run or a strength after. I'm going to show it to you.
Go to moboboard.com to learn all about Jay DeSherry's great creation. It is proprietary, made by Jay.
And you can get a discount, A to Z Running 10, for 10% off.
So for $77, and that's probably one of the wisest $77 investments you can make in your running strength and stability type of work. That board, and it's a fairly hardy thing too. So if your kids are prone to play with your exercise equipment.
Not that that's happened to us.
Never. Mm-hmm. It's good stuff. Now, we have one more great thing to share. For those of you planning to be in Michigan, West Michigan, around April 24th, we've got a 5K, 10K half marathon called Rivertown Races, and it's a wonderful event, and we can provide you a 10% discount if you use code A2Z_2021, the year, numbers. And that will give you 10% whichever event you want. However, it's limited. There are not that many uses available. So if you would like to jump on that, you need to do so soon, and you need to do so before February 1st when prices increase again as well.
So speaking of racing and our hopes to do that soon, we're going to talk about the world of running.
Plenty to share in the world of running going on, both on the roads and the track. So we've got a couple of different mediums for you here, and we're going to start that off with going down to Naples, Florida. This was back on January 17th, and a show friend, Parker Stinson, had recently come off of injury to kind of test his wheels a bit. And what a test it was. Yeah. A solid test indeed. So he ran in a winning time, fast time, and then because he's a swell guy, was willing to share directly with you how the race went. So let's hear from Parker.
Hey, Andi and Zach, Parker Stinson here. Just giving a recap of my race from the Naples Half Marathon. It was really great. Honestly, I hadn't raced in 15 months. I missed running for 8 months. Got surgery and all this kind of stuff. So I really just didn't know what to expect. I've put together a few good workouts and this and that, but to go out there and solo a 63:30 on, it's a fast course, but it's not, it's not like Houston half marathon or those big city half marathons. It's not fast like that. So to run 63:30 completely solo and in 80% humidity, I was really surprised, honestly. Dathan Ritzenheime's just an amazing coach, and we just work really hard, and so hard work always pays off. And I was surprised not only how fast I ran, but just how smooth and comfortable I felt. I felt very within myself for most of the race. So I'm really excited for the rest of this year, and can't wait to build off of this. Really stoked.
Thanks for the inside scoop, Parker. If you want to listen to our episode with Parker, I'll be linking to that in our show notes. So next, Las Vegas. So another warm place. All these warm places are tempting me. Warmth abounds in some places, not in Michigan. There was the Las Vegas Gold Half Marathon, and Molly Seidel, she ran a first place time of 1:09:20.
Solid, and a new PR performance.
Yeah. No one's reporting that it was a PR for her, but I looked at World Athletics and it's a PR. So
naturally, we're all just kind of hoping and crossing our fingers that we're right in saying it's a PR. But it does appear to be so as far as what we found on paper.
Yeah, and her new sponsor is Puma. That's a little bit of an update too.
Yeah, so running in some Puma cats. All right, congrats, Molly Seidel. Fast times, good things. Jim Walmsley made an attempt at the 100K world record, and this was on January 23 in Chandler, Arizona, put on by the Hoka crew there. And now you're all wondering, did he get it?
So close. Almost. 11 seconds.
Wait, pause. 11 seconds over 100 kilometers. Try to do a little bit of math in your head, and you'll amount to that's about 1/6 of a second per mile. No, I'm doing the math wrong.
No, it's 1 second per 10K,
about
right?
1.6 tenths of a second per mile.
Ouch.
Oh, sorry, Jim.
But amazingly fast. Under 6-minute pace.
Yeah.
For 100K. Solid.
So when you run a 100K and you go for the world record, just make sure that you either get it or miss it by a lot.
Oh, so it's not so painful. Well, I see it as a valiant thing. Thank you, Jim, for inspiring us. So a thing, Moo, we talked about her last week about how she got that U20 record. Well, this week, she got the 600-meter collegiate record. She's
NCAA
a freshman.
Collegiate record by a freshman.
Quite incredible. And that time was 1:25.8. And that was a 40-year-old record, Zach.
Yeah, that's fast. So if she were to carry on that pace for half a mile, because everyone's hearing 600 meters and thinking, I don't even know what that is. Is that a thing? Do people run 600 meters? Well, they do, but usually en route to a different distance. And if she would have carried that pace on through 800 meters, that would amount to somewhere in the vicinity of a 154, 153. You never really exactly know, because that next 200 is about the worst experience of your life in an 800. Mm-hmm. But even if she didn't carry on pace, she's running well under 2 minutes for 800 on that.
That's amazing. So next, teammate of our guest today, Leah Falland of On Running. She did a world-leading indoor time this past week in 4:35.
So that was on the 23rd.
Super low-key, too.
On the 23rd at the GCU indoor meet in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. Where they are on kind of like a little training camp as a crew. Very exciting.
Well, that was amazing. So congrats, Leah. Excited for this season and where it will take you. Next up, we're going to talk about our main topic.
Well, much can be said on the topic of having good races. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that needs to be said is do it. It's quite nice.
Race.
It's quite nice to have a good race. And even if it's not a great race, it's still nice to have a good one. Okay, so why, how, and what do you do in order to have a good race? And it's important to reflect on these kinds of thoughts, because I'm sure you've had some of them. Like, do you ever feel like race day is just rolling the dice, right? Where you just show up and you're like, I hope this goes well. Hope that it comes together. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, which is part of the reason why some of us feel like it's just rolling the dice every time. Or the other thought that many of us have in terms of race day is the kind of more superstitious end of things, where it's like that one time, You had that good race when you were wearing that one thing. Doesn't matter what kind of apparel or clothing or accessory it was, that thing must have been part of why it was a good race. And so you must wear it every time. And of course, we all know that there's one kernel of truth to those kinds of things, which is the psychological benefit of thinking it's helping you, and consequently it actually, it's bias. You're proving your bias. But in reality, there's a whole lot more we should be thinking about in terms of what it constitutes a good day on race day and what we need to do in order to try to assure or ensure that as best as possible. And I'm going to give you a couple of categories here to frame your thinking before our conversation with Alicia, because then she's going to really dive into some very specific things that helped in her own experience, and we'll wrap it all up at the end. So be thinking about these categories when you listen to Alicia. First of all, of course, your physical preparation, your training. That is the most important thing in having a good race day. And unfortunately, while it is the most important thing, many of us don't actually know what it takes in training to achieve the best possible outcome on race day. So we certainly know general rules of training that apply, like it's good to run certain kinds of workouts if you're doing certain kinds of distances. We understand those kinds of things. But what are the factors that piece together the right kind of day on race day? And so if you're not aware of those things, become a student of them and listen to what Alicia has to say, because she does have some things to say about it. But the next category here might be one of the most important when it comes to what does it take to find the edge and ride the edge properly, and that is the mental preparation and your mindset. And if you're not sure exactly where to go with that topic, you need to especially listen closely to this interview.
Alicia's a master. And
then, of course, I do want you to reflect on the classics like fueling and race day nuances and the experience of race day and how those things contribute to good race experiences. Because we can do all the right training. We can be in our head in all the right ways. And then something happens on race day that just throws off the groove, and we want to try to minimize those kinds of things too. So let's first get into our conversation with our guest, and then be sure to stay tuned because we're going to wrap it all up nicely at the end. So Andi, tell us about Alicia.
Alicia Monson runs for AtoZrunning. She is a new pro runner, but is not new to running fast. Now,
nice.
I do want to start with our intro accolade, which is her 9th all-time 10K U.S. time, and that was 31:10. Happened very recently, and she was finishing her degree while she got this time.
It's important to note that was a debut 10K performance
As a professional.
Yes. The first time she shows up post-college to run a solid race, and that's what she does.
Yeah. Incredible. She, like I said, is no stranger to running fast. She's a 5-time All-American, and she went to the University of Wisconsin, where she is a school record holder, and she's a Big Ten record holder. And she has all kinds of academic accolades. I could go on and on about Alicia, but we have her on the show, so we want to get to her talking. Let's hear from Alicia. Hi, Alicia. Welcome to the AtoZrunning Podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Well, there's a lot of congratulations in order.
Lots of congratulations.
Yeah.
Big piles of them.
Piles of them. So you just graduated. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. That was exciting to finally get that out of the way, Crazy 2020.
For you, it was actually super busy, right?
Yeah. I feel like most of the year was just me going in between different areas of my life and finishing up my degree, moving across the country, stuff like that. So yeah, it was an exciting year, a busy year. So yeah.
Yeah,
and highly successful.
That too, yeah. We're still working on that though.
Well, more to come. That's exciting. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that transition period, because it was obviously a great time for you, going from college, right? And having it be 2020 and all this weirdness, and you turn pro, and then you get that 9th all-time 10K. So talk us through a little bit of that transition that you had going from college then to pro running.
Yeah, it was just from March until December was just kind of a lot of moving parts, and luckily it kind of has all come together and it feels a little bit more sane now. But I mean, yeah, just going like after obviously the college season was canceled starting in indoor nationals and the entire rest of the outdoor season. So that was kind of just the rug pulled out from under you, but it kind of, honestly turned out for the better for me. Like I was given a great opportunity to come out here and run for On Running, and we have a great group of people that we got together. Like I still have a teammate that I had from Wisconsin, Ollie, and then also just a bunch of young faces from the NCAA, and then also some pros who have been around the circuit for a bit. So it was definitely, coming here this summer, it was kind of like a transition of me getting used to different kinds of training and also just getting through, obviously, like when you're in quarantine, everyone went through the same thing of like, you're not able to see your massage therapist anymore, or your trainers and stuff like that. So that was kind of difficult. And I like went through some little niggles in my feet. And then once we were able to really get some consistency, like that was a game changer for me. And being able to get solid training and coming into that, 9th all-time 10K was just a huge breakthrough for me.
So you say it was a huge breakthrough, which means I think you're intimating that it was a good race for you. And I think a lot of what we're about to talk about here hinges on whether that was true. We're assuming that was a good race. Was that a good race for you?
Yeah, no, that was a good race. That was like just something that we had been looking forward to, and I hadn't really ran a competitive 10K ever, and so it was just a big milestone for me to actually get training in, and the training showed I could do it, and so to actually go out there and race and actually do it was great for me.
Yeah. Okay. So 9th best in history. Mm-hmm. Going in, knowing that you're fit and you're ready for this, like, tell us how in your mind this played out. Like, what was your self-talk like? How did you approach it?
Most of the fall was centered around the fact that we knew I could run a fast 10K. And so a lot of it, I feel like, came from just the consistency throughout the entire fall. Like going into the race, I just kind of was thinking about how much, like, I raced, or I trained 1,000 miles in the fall just for the 6-mile race. So I was like, if I was able to do that, I can get through this race. Like I can do well. So a lot of it was just taking confidence from my training, and then also just the way Dathan set up our entire training and our mindset going into races. Like during workouts, I think Dathan does a good job of just giving us little mantras to think of. So kind of having people to, give me something during the 25 laps of the race was good, because Dathan, I would see Dathan like every 200 meters. So, especially because obviously there's not spectators right now because of COVID. So it kind of actually gives the athletes a better chance to hear their coaches. So that was an interesting part. But yeah, just kind of like being able to stay calm and confident, because I obviously hadn't been in that kind of race before. Like it was, a top 10K race, and I had I had run one 10K before, and I ran it in like 33 minutes. So, it was like I really was in new waters. And so it just really came from the confidence in training, because I didn't have that kind of experience in races.
You look like you had the experience. I mean, you are a seasoned runner, but when you're running, you did look very confident and very smooth and in control the whole time. So amazing. I read an On Running interview where Dathan had said that he told you to run instinctually. What does that mean, and how did that play out?
I think part of it was the fact that I kind of accidentally found myself at the front of the race, which I didn't really intend to do that, but like it ended up that just like I was starting on the inside of the lanes, and there's like, so many athletes. And so when the race started, I naturally was in like a 5th place position, and 2 of those people were pacers. So yeah, that was kind of like accidental. And so I just kind of had to go back to Dathan telling me to trust my instincts and be like, this is okay. Like, it's not exactly what I expected, but I've done the training to be able to do this. So it kind of was me knowing where I was and also knowing how fast we wanted to go, because Dathan went into it saying, hey, you can run 31 minutes for a 10K. And so just me knowing what kind of pace that was, I had to be like, all right, what are we on? What are we on? And so then it was just kind of me, judging the race as it went, being like, all right, do we need to go faster? Is this good? And just kind of staying controlled then. So yeah, it was kind of a nerve-wracking thing to find myself towards the front, but I just kind of had to trust it and know that we're all out here to get a fast time. So, that's what we did.
Yeah, definitely. That was a really fast race. That was incredible to watch.
Absolutely was. So the two parts of our question, if you will, then really are in thinking about how we can, or what we can influence at least, to try to have a good race. The first thing that needs to be answered is, how do we know that it's a good race? So when you think about that race specifically, or in general in any of your racing experiences, what tells you that you have had a good race?
I think part of it is that when we're looking at a race, we anticipate it because of the people that we know are going to be in the race. So I went into this race being like, oh my gosh, there's so many good people that have experience in running in this race. So even before the race, I knew it was going to be a good race. But then at the same time, you can talk all you want about people, but you have to know what you yourself can do. So going into a race, it's like, all right, have I prepared myself? And then once you start a race, it's like, all right, am I in the right mindset? Have I warmed up? Obviously you need to warm up, but like, I feel like it's a good race when you kind of have the mindset that, hey, I can do this, I can compete, and whatever happens, as long as I actually put myself out there. And then like also just, listening to like Dathan said, listening to your instincts, because at the end of the day, like, that's all you can do. Is like most of us, if we're in a race, I mean, whether you're in a track race or like a road 5K, you have trained for it most likely. So you know what you can do. And so like what your best is for that day.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate, Alicia, that you did not say, when you run a PR, it's a good race, or when you finish top 10 all time, it's a good race. Because those are things, those are clearly things that can be positive, right? That's an objective measure. But there's so much more beneath the surface of what makes that the right kind of, the good in that sense. So I appreciate that. That's a positive reflection. Thank you. So in thinking then about how you kind of, what that's like then when you're in the midst of it and can kind of measure that accordingly, what do you need to do to try to ensure that happens? That's the big question here then. And I think if we could start just on race day itself, what do you do that day to make sure that when the race goes off, that you're in the space you need to be in to have a good race?
I think a lot of it is mental. Like, any race day, I mean, obviously it kind of depends on what time of the day you're racing, cross country or a road race, maybe you're racing in the morning. Track races, a lot of the time we're racing at 9 p.m. So we're literally like sitting around all day, which can be really nerve-wracking, but a lot of it is just me thinking about the race and being like, all right, what's my warm-up going to look like? What time am I racing? So what time do I need to eat something? What time do I need to get coffee? What time do I need to warm up? What time do I need to be at the check-in thing? I don't know, where they check your spikes and stuff. So a lot of it is just like, for me personally, is planning, because that kind of gives me like a sense of security. And so that, because otherwise I could be like, not knowing what time I have to be at something and then I warm up too late or whatever. So a lot of it is just planning. And then the other part is, for me, is imagining what the race is going to be like. So kind of going through like, all right, it's 25 laps. it's going to hurt like 2/3 of the way through really bad. And so for me, I usually have to imagine like that kind of pain and imagine me getting over it and being like, all right, this is it. Now I can get past it and race well. So for me, it's like imagining that I'm going to be in extreme pain at some point, because if I get to that point in the actual race, then, you know, in the just from experience, like if I didn't think about that beforehand, then you could just panic when it comes and then shut down. So for me, it's a lot of just mentally preparing for being able to get past any difficult points in a race.
Yeah, the expectation that it's going to hurt. And like we know, a lot of us have been runners for a long time. Those listening right now have been runners a long time and know that race day hurts. But sometimes we like get into this disillusionment. We're like, we're so ready for this. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be this like, Cinderella moment where you don't feel pain, which is just not logical at all. But I love that you're giving us this practical, like, yes, I imagine the pain and the hurt, and then I imagine myself achieving and jumping over that hurdle of pain in order to get to the end. But that is really practical and really helpful advice.
Yeah,
definitely.
So naturally, you can't just get to race day and be an expert at that kind of a thing. So I think we need to back up a little bit further then and just think about the long-term preparation. You kept saying earlier that you really were confident throughout the training that you were capable. And so there's certainly a question there as to how can you know that you're capable of a certain performance. But then there's also the question of what do you do in that preparation, whether it's the training, whether it's the downtime between the workouts kind of thing. What do you do during that time to be capable as well as to prepare yourself for the kind of experience in the race, like being ready for the pain, like being able to put yourself in the mindset? What does that look like?
It's a lot of just practice, like 2 hours, maybe let's say 2 hours out of the day you're training, the other 22, it's preparing yourself to train. So a lot of it is, the easy thing to say is during workouts, you're putting yourself into this position similar to what it's like during a race. So you can practice both physically and mentally of what that's going to be like. So, Dathan had us do, I remember this really hard workout. It was a track workout that basically simulated like different, 5K, 10K mile races. Race paces. And I just remember being like completely lactic halfway through and being like, all right, this is really difficult. But I got through it. And so me just being able to come into race day being like, I got through that workout, so like this won't even be that bad. Just having that kind of confidence coming from training. So, that's a different thing for everyone and people train differently. But to me, having some sort of really hard workout or time trial helps me know that I can have a really good race. And then also just like mantras, like even during a random workout, I would be finishing thinking 31 minutes because I knew I wanted to run a 10K in 31 minutes. So just finding some sort of mantra, something to focus on, is helpful for me. And then also just all of the little things like sleep, eat, body work, being able to, stretch and get done with any therapy that you need to do. Like we get physio probably twice a week. So just being able to take care of your body. And this fall is a lot easier said than done for me with school, because I feel like I would get done with running and then have to go to online class or something. So that's one thing I'm really excited about coming into 2021 is not having to go to class and being able to actually focus on more of the little things, because I think I already did a pretty good job of that during the fall, but I always felt like I needed like 30 hours in a day instead of 24. So that's really exciting. But anyways, just all of the little things, I feel like is really cumulative into a really good race, because 98% of the work that we do is training and day-to-day stuff, and 2% of it is the actual racing.
and probably even less of a percent than that lately.
Yeah, for this
Yeah.
year.
How few race opportunities.
Right.
Yeah.
So how important is
Unfortunately,
it to,
but yeah.
yeah. How important is it for you personally to have people that tell you, like, you can do this? Like a coach, teammates, friends, family?
I think it's just really helpful to have like a team around you. I just actually had this conversation with my teammate Emily this weekend because we had been visiting like our parents over the holidays. So we had been gone for like 2 weeks, and it's just like you don't realize it, but it's so much easier when you have a team around you to train and even to just do the little like my long run is like 16 miles was so much more enjoyable running with teammates than like running by myself in the cold. So just like having people who are like-minded and are supporting you is really helpful. So I mean, I would like to say like I can rely on myself, but at the same time, like I recognize that it's just like it's really something else if you can have a coach or teammates or a significant other, like whatever you have as a support system to just like really support you.
Mm-hmm. That's really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we talk about that kind of thing a lot with our audience, because you're talking to a lot of adult runners who don't necessarily have the kind of team experience. Many have never experienced a running team, in fact. And, there's local running clubs and things like that, but it's tough. It's tough when life is busy. But the importance of being able to share that dynamic, that experience with other runners, or even if it's not other runners, but people who can encourage and inspire, believe in us, that's huge.
It was actually Emily Oren who told us that she was saying that when she started and even into like collegiate stuff, that other people believed in what she could do more than she did. And that helped like launch her into professional running. So I think it's interesting that you mentioned Emily, and we had her on, and she said, was talking about how important team is to her. But yeah, really cool that you guys have each other. And speaking of teammates, I just is a little off topic, Zach. I'm sorry. But I loved when I researched you and I found that video of you, and FlowTrack called it Alicia Monson is the best teammate. And it's a video of you. I'm going to link to it, everyone. So you're going to actually get to watch this race because it's quite incredible. But Alicia is helping her teammate in a Big Ten championship get second place. So they went 1-2, and she's just like cheering her on the whole time. So when I think of teammate, and I think a lot of people, if they have seen that race, are going to think, yes, Alicia is the person to be a teammate with. Can you tell us about like the strategy going into that race?
Yeah, no, that was a fun race. That was indoor. It was the indoor Big Ten 5K. That was my junior year. And so that was my teammate Amy, who I was cheering on. And Amy and I, like, she was a fifth year, my senior year. So we were with each other, my entire college career. And we basically, like, both of us had very similar training. And we, both raced on a high level. We went 1-2 in the Big Ten, and Amy's amazing. She just ran the Olympic trials qualifier at the same 10K that I was in. So that was fun to see her do well. But so anyways, we just go way back, and we, ran so many miles together in college that we spent so much time encouraging each other in workouts and whatever, it went back and forth. Sometimes Amy's dragging me along, sometimes I'm dragging her along. So just to kind of, it's funny that was so popular for people to watch, because to me and Amy, that was just kind of how we are. Like, we just like cheer each other on. Like, that's what teammates do, that you support each other. So it's just really cool that was actually recognized, because I think that people should support that more often. Like, you should be cheering for your teammate. If you have the ability to do it, like, you should do it. So yeah, that was exciting. It was like the first 22 laps of, it's an indoor 5K, so it's like 200 meters. So it's like 25 laps, but the first like 22 laps were just pretty, bunched up. And so we knew it would be a sit and kick race. And this was Amy's last indoor race ever because she didn't have fifth year eligibility for indoors. So we had always wanted to go 1-2, and it came down to like us and a couple other people. And I knew that, we had to kick it in, and I was just giving her all the support I could. So I was just really glad that we could end up with that kind of win on her last indoor season. So that was just a really great memory for me.
Oh, yeah. So cool. So would you call that a successful race, Alicia?
Yeah, I would call that a successful race. It's nothing like, it's not the NCAA championships, but that was really significant for us. So I would call that successful.
Absolutely. Very cool. So when we're talking about factors and going back, Zach, he's like, I go off topic because I get excited. But other factors that contribute to having a good race, and we talked about training and then like the day of, I kind of want to go from the training process to that mindset. It's the day of, and you've done all the training. You have the confidence, you have your mantras, you have your game plan, and something goes wrong. I don't know what it is. It's going to be different for everybody else. But what is your process to getting through unexpected things on race day?
I think for me, it's to say like, that's okay. Something's going to go wrong. And I had this conversation like last week, actually. I was talking about how, yeah, you can have pre-race routines, but it's not going to be perfect. Like, I can't think of any race day that has gone perfectly. But you can still have a good race. So like, for example, let's say you always have oatmeal with peanut butter and banana as your pre-race meal, and you're staying at a hotel and their breakfast only has toast and peanut butter with raisins. I don't know. Like, you still know that you'll be able to handle that in your stomach. Like, it's a very similar meal, but some people could easily, go off the rails because they're like, I don't have my pre-race meal. Like, that's it. So to me, it's like, you have to take something, ask yourself if that's okay. Like, maybe I remember one time, it was before my senior year of cross country, my coach accidentally locked, we were staying at a hotel like an hour away. My coach accidentally locked the car keys in the van while it was running. And so he was driving like 90 miles an hour down the freeway, and I got to the race. I like had to jump out of the van. It was 20 minutes before race time. And so obviously you don't have time for like a proper warm up, but you just have to be like, all right, this is where it's at. What can I do about it? So, I did as good of a warm up as possible, and then I still won the race. I didn't let that get to me. I just had to be like, all right, what can I do about it? So I think part of it is being like, all right, what's the situation and what can I control? Because if you can't control it, then, what's the point? So just having a good attitude, I think, is really, something that can help you get past it.
I'm seeing a theme here that's like super profound, and it's like you're expecting the pain and you're expecting it not to be perfect, but you're planning, or you're doing your best to control the factors that you can.
Yeah.
And I think that is a great takeaway.
Absolutely.
So my last question then, if you will, is when is the next good race going to be? What's that going to look like for you? Because I imagine that you're not going to try to race top 10 performances every single time you race necessarily.
Yes, she is.
Although I don't want to rule it out.
I wish I could, but yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting this year because we don't exactly know when the races are going to be. Obviously, with COVID, things change, race locations change. So we're just kind of looking to, get some racing in February. And we've got some options in different places, but like basically I'm training for like a 5K ultimately to hope ideally get an Olympic standard. So we're training for that. And then also, I'm sure I'll run some 1500s here and there, which obviously, if I ran a really fast 10K, I don't exactly have the experience in a 1500 that I would like to have, but that's what we're working on. I don't expect a top 10 performance, but I'm definitely going to try to PR. So that's all you can hope for. But yeah, I mean, we're hoping to, get in some good races in February, but again, like, you don't know when exactly the next good race is going to be, especially right now. So, just kind of putting in the work anyways, because ultimately we're looking at the Olympic trials this year. So whatever we can do to kind of have small goals to that ultimate goal is what we're thinking right now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to follow you, and we'll keep our audience updated on your running too. I'm really excited about it. In fact, Dathan told us that you are definitely one to watch. And obviously your track record, even before that 10K, was showing that, you're an Olympic hopeful and there's exciting things to come. But seeing that 10K was really exciting. You added a lot of vibrancy, in that race to the rest of us who have had a lot of racing on hold. To see you do that amazing race and to know your capabilities coming into this Olympic year is just really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really excited about it. I definitely think, there's going to be a lot of different people that come out and are really excited to race this year. So I'm just excited to be a part of it. And I think it's going to be obviously 2020 was so crazy that I think everyone's just going to find it to be such a relief to actually be able to go through and do some racing this year.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great year.
Great year.
Well, thank you, Alicia. So how profound is it that the biggest takeaway I have from Alicia about having a great race day is knowing that things won't be perfect? So having the best race day of your life means
not having a good race day? Oh,
no, creating that space in your mind that you're knowing that you're going to have to endure. And it won't be perfect. There's going to be something that goes wrong. But being able to choose to get after it with all the intensity that you can muster and make that race day happen. I thought that was a great takeaway.
It is really important to be aware of the kinds of things that, the things that go wrong that can derail you. And in Alicia's case, as she was sharing, just being ready for what do you do when that may or may not happen. Certainly when the pain hits, that can derail us. And that happens every time. I mean,
you can expect that it will be painful.
If you have found a way to run a race at a hard effort without the pain, we would like to take what you're taking, as long as it's legal.
No.
And in wrapping up, so yes, and considering then all of these things, certainly that mental edge that's the piece that almost always makes one of the biggest differences, because you do all the physical preparation, you do all the training, and you do it reasonably well. You may not know all the answers to what it takes to do high quality training in every aspect of everything, but that's okay. You're still giving it a hard try, and you're getting to race day reasonably well prepared at the very minimum. So then the question is, why is it that things don't come together all the time on that day? And that mental edge piece cannot be under exaggerated. Mm-hmm. And so in that instance, I appreciate that advice as well. And as we reflect then on certainly that there's those other nuances that do occur on race day, be prepared for certain kinds of things to not go perfectly according to plan. And some of that we just kind of have to be able to shrug off. And some of it we have to be able to have a backup plan of what am I going to do if this does in fact happen? If a shoe falls off in the race, what are you going to do? Are you going to go back and get it? Or are you a mile away from the finish and you're just going to muscle it out? Now, if that shoe happens to be a $250 carbon shoe that you're wearing for the first time, I suggest going and getting it. But that's only one consideration. Also, those things are like stilts, and you don't want to be running on uneven hips for too long either.
That's
okay,
true.
So that, of course, among many other things. Now, we just want to share very briefly then to wrap up the entire topic. You've got to be thinking about things like fueling. And because you've been listening to our episodes like the one with Megan where she talked about nutrition, and having a sports nutritionist talk about nutrition is always a helpful way to definitely clarify these things. We know that it's important to not make any major changes to your diet and nutrition on race week or race day, even worse. So try to stick with, the kind of fueling that seems to work for you in day-to-day life. And if you feel like day-to-day life fueling causes you problems all the time, then it certainly is worth thinking about trying to make some potential changes. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, are you going to fuel during the race? And so if you're doing the super long distance races and some of those kinds of things, it's good to pay attention to the research on how much your body can process in a given period of time, because it's a lot less than many of us think. And so many of us are trying to overfuel or potentially take too much sugar or some of those kinds of things. And then, on the other side of it, just not necessarily knowing, not necessarily being prepared. So those are things we always want to be thinking about for the longer distance races.
Mm-hmm.
And then race day nuance. So be prepared for the travel and try to minimize as many of the, the potential things that can go wrong. And the best way that we think about it is the goal on race day is to try to create for yourself the path of least resistance, so that you put all that hard work and that time and effort in, and you don't want the preparation to go to waste.
I'm going to give you a couple practical things. One, don't walk around forever trying to find dinner. Order it into the hotel, spend the extra $10 and have it ordered in. Because if you're walking around in Chicago, for instance,
you've never done that before.
We've never walked around forever the night before a race.
4 miles to and from packet pickup.
That is one thing I will tell you. Don't do it. Number 2, Zach, I'm going to call you out. I'm sorry. I'm going to do it. Don't try to acclimate to another time zone if you don't have to. So don't stay up super late because you're in California and you're from, Michigan.
I don't
you
do that on
have
purpose.
To.
It's just the party scene is so live. It's electric. At least the sounds of it are through the walls in my thinly walled hotel room.
So that's the second thing. The third thing is set alarms on your phone if you're too nervous to eat and make yourself do it. We talked about fueling a little bit, but some of us actually don't feel hungry when we're nervous. Set an alarm for yourself. You got to do it.
And get that bacon, egg, and cheese bagel.
Megan says no to that, by the way.
No, Megan says no to that for Megan. Zach says yes to that for Zach and many others who have tried it.
Oh, no. Well, let's finish with that. Next week, we're talking about foot health. So that's coming up next. So subscribe, because we're going to be talking about things you got to do for your feet, things we overlook, and then also footwear, the ongoing conversation.
It is an excellent conversation with more practical things in one episode than probably the rest of everything else you've ever heard on foot health combined.
That's a big claim. But it's really good. It's with Bill Johncock, who is a podiatrist and sports specialist in it as well.
And as always, if you have thoughts or questions in your mind, that's the worst place for them to be, because we can't possibly answer them. We can't read minds. So share those thoughts and questions in all the places that can get our attention, and we will talk about you, possibly, on the show.
Yeah, so you can follow us at AtoZrunning. You can also follow Alicia at Monson Alicia. So just her name flip-flopped, and you'll be finding inspiring things there as well. And you can follow Alicia on her journey to the Olympic trials.